Stop everything and confront the single most dangerous vulnerability you possess: sentimental trust. You have been conditioned to believe that loyalty is a reward for your kindness and that vulnerability is the path to connection. This is the crisis of blind trust, and it is the single greatest lie that compromises your strategic security. Every time you extend unconditional trust, you are creating a predictable, exploitable point of failure. You are handing the keys to your financial stability, your sensitive intelligence, and your emotional fortitude to an external force that is fundamentally governed by a single, self-preserving impulse: self-interest. Think about the psychological cost: the anxiety you feel when you suspect betrayal, the hours you spend rationalizing bad behavior, the energy you waste hoping someone will choose your well-being over their convenience. This effort is a tax on your ambition, and it is entirely avoidable. The world is not populated by saints. It is populated by human beings who are structurally designed to maximize their own outcomes. The powerful strategist doesn't judge this. They accept it as law. They assume, as a starting premise, that any ally, any subordinate, or any friend will act in their own interest when the pressure is high and the cost of loyalty exceeds the reward. Machiavelli, with his cold strategic clarity, provided the ultimate measure of this reality. Men sooner forget the death of their father than the loss of their patrimony. This statement is profoundly strategic. It teaches that deep emotional needs and sentiment are quickly overridden by the immediate, tangible reality of material stability. Your goal is to eliminate any structure in your life that relies solely on the fragility of human sentiment. This video is the blueprint for replacing the fatal vulnerability of trust with the structural strength of leverage. We will teach you how to treat alliances as strategic assets, how to assume self-interest in others, and how to build a network of systems and contingencies that make you utterly immune to the final betrayal. Are you ready to abandon the dangerous illusion of sentimental loyalty and build power that lasts? Now, drop this affirmation in the comments and commit to the discipline. I build leverage. Trust is obsolete. Number 1. The law of self-interest. The first foundational law in dismantling the fatal illusion of trust is the absolute acceptance of the law of self-interest. You must operate on the premise that all people are primarily and structurally driven by their own gain. Your task is to eliminate the naive moral judgment that accompanies this realization. This principle is not a cynical view of humanity. It is an essential strategic truth that provides the only stable framework for predicting and influencing behavior. The majority are psychologically compromised by a comforting fantasy. They desperately wish to believe that loyalty, commitment, and good intentions are strong enough to override personal necessity when pressure is applied. Machiavelli pinpointed the root of this self-deception. Men willingly believe what they wish to believe. They wish to believe their allies are motivated by friendship. Therefore, they choose to ignore the clear, objective signals that their allies are actually motivated by profit, security, and personal ambition. This moral blindness guarantees future betrayal and structural failure. To master this law, you must enforce amoral analysis. This means you stop judging actions as good or evil and start judging them as strategically effective or ineffective. When a business partner acts solely in their own interest, you do not feel hurt or betrayed. You receive confirmation of the operating reality and adjust your security protocols immediately. When an employee prioritizes a higher-paying competitor, you do not label them disloyal. You see a predictable economic decision and recognize the need to improve your counter-leverage. This law requires you to reject the emotional expectation that your kindness should guarantee their loyalty. Your kindness is a factor, but their self-interest is the determinant. By assuming self-interest as the baseline for all human interaction, you eliminate the possibility of shock and disappointment, replacing them with preparedness and foresight. Imagine a high-stakes business alliance where you must share proprietary information. The sentimental approach relies entirely on the allies' history and their verbal promise of mutual success. So you share all your plans openly, trusting that their friendship will protect the information. However, when a better opportunity comes along, like a rival offering a higher stake, they may use your proprietary information to advance their own position, leaving you exposed and paralyzed by the sense of moral betrayal. In contrast, the strategic approach involves proceeding with the alliance while operating from self-interest. You withhold the most critical piece of proprietary information and secure a strong contract with severe penalties, assuming the ally might betray you if the financial gain is worth it. As a result, the potential betrayal is structurally constrained by the costly penalties, making it too expensive to carry out. In this way, you place your trust in the system rather than in sentiment. To achieve this level of cold clarity, you must develop a blueprint for objective prediction. Identify primary drivers. For every critical person in your network, identify their dominant fear and their dominant desire. These are their levers. Define walkaway points. Calculate the financial or social threshold at which the cost of remaining loyal to you exceeds the benefit of leaving. This is their price of betrayal. Build counter-incentives. Ensure that your reliance on them is balanced by their reliance on you, or that the contractual cost of their departure is ruinous to their self-interest. By embracing the law of self-interest, you cease being a victim of naive surprise. You gain the power of accurate prediction, allowing you to build alliances based on structural stability rather than the volatile fragility of human emotion. Number 2. The Betrayal Calculus. The second law in mastering the final betrayal requires you to internalize the betrayal calculus. This is the necessary discipline of surgically calculating the probability of betrayal before it occurs, turning prediction into your ultimate defense. Naive individuals operate on sentiment, only reacting when trust is already destroyed. The strategist, however, operates on objective metrics, assuming risk as a baseline and continuously monitoring for critical red flags. Machiavelli defined the ruthless necessity of vigilance. The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. This is a mandate for dual competency. You must possess the cunning of the fox to recognize the traps, the subtle, escalating behavioral signals that indicate a willingness to compromise your alliance. Simultaneously, you must possess the strength of the lion to enforce your boundaries and act decisively when the data confirms a threat. The 3 red flags of compromise. Betrayal rarely strikes without warning. It typically escalates through predictable, measurable stages that you must learn to identify as immediate strategic threats. The energy drain. This is the initial, low-cost phase of psychological exploitation. The individual begins to consistently take more than they give. Chronic time wasting, emotional over-reliance, or minor financial imbalances. They are testing your boundaries to see what you will tolerate. If you accept this imbalance without consequence, they receive the signal that your resources are cheap and your limits are non-existent. Actionable signal. Watch for asymmetrical effort. If you are consistently investing 80% of the energy, the betrayal clock is running. The value shift. The individual begins to subtly devalue your worth. They stop celebrating your wins, they minimize your contributions in public, or they engage in low-grade criticism. This is a psychological maneuver to justify their future action. They must convince themselves you are not worthy of their loyalty before they break it. Actionable signal. Listen for shifted language. If compliments dry up or shift to focusing only on your weaknesses, they are mentally preparing for severance. The information block. This is the final stage before betrayal. They suddenly become vague, non-committal, or cease sharing crucial information with you. They pull back contact without a clear reason, as they are now operating on a separate, hidden strategic track. Actionable signal. Note abrupt communication gaps. They are structurally separating your fates, so their impending action does not compromise them. The betrayal calculus works by predicting the moment when the cost of loyalty outweighs the reward of self-interest. The cost of loyalty includes the effort, time, or self-control needed to stay committed as an ally, such as keeping a secret, working hard for mutual success, or honoring an agreed contract. On the other hand, the reward of self-interest represents the external benefits one could gain by betraying you, like a better salary offer from a competitor, avoiding a harsh penalty by breaking terms, or seizing control over a shared resource. When the perceived rewards of self-interest surpass the costs of loyalty, betrayal becomes more likely. Your strategic duty is to ensure the cost of loyalty remains exponentially lower than the temptation of the reward of self-interest. If you identify that the adversary has received an incentive that exceeds your counter-leverage, you must immediately assume betrayal is imminent and initiate a defensive countermove. Imagine co-founding a small venture with an ally and sharing all the intellectual property. The ignored test begins when the ally starts missing shared deadlines, an energy drain, and subtly refers to the IP as "my work" during meetings, signaling a value shift. The naive founder overlooks these red flags. In contrast, the calculated defense comes from the strategist, who recognizes these signs but does not confront the ally immediately. Instead, they swiftly update the operating agreement to tighten IP ownership and implement strict private accountability measures. When the ally later tries to take the IP to a competitor, they discover their access is legally blocked, making betrayal financially devastating. Like a fox setting a trap before the lion strikes, this approach transforms passive shock into proactive control, ensuring you are never a victim of the fragile and predictable nature of human commitment. Number 3. Structural dependence. The third strategic pillar in dismantling the illusion of trust is the construction of structural dependence. This is the cold, unwavering recognition that leverage is the only reliable form of loyalty. You must surgically eliminate all reliance on the fragility of affection and instead make yourself so fundamentally indispensable that others are forced into reliability out of necessity. The core mistake of the masses is confusing emotional attachment with strategic security. When you build your alliances on sentimental bonds, you are structurally compromised because sentiment is transient and collapses instantly under pressure. The strategist, however, understands that utility is eternal. People will act to preserve their own resources and success. Machiavelli defined the ultimate security measure for a ruler. The best fortress is to be found in the love of the people who are indispensable. For the modern strategist, this love is not affection. It is the structural, economic, and strategic reliance your network has on you. Your fortress is built not on trust, but on the unassailable utility you provide, making your continued presence a non-negotiable requirement for their success. To build true dependency, you need to shift from simply being useful to becoming irreplaceable. Start by controlling the central node. Position yourself as the essential connector or information hub so that all vital resources, intelligence, or opportunities to your allies flow through you, making you a strategic choke point. Next, hoard asymmetrical skills by developing rare, high-value abilities that are tedious, time-consuming, or hard for others nearby to replicate. When your replacement cost is high, your leverage becomes absolute. Finally, manage the failure point by making sure your allies realize that your absence would cause catastrophic failure in their plans, securing their loyalty through the perceived ruin that would follow your departure. This law requires you to reject the emotional expectation of loyalty and replace it with a strategic calculation. You assume, as a matter of due diligence, that any ally will eventually betray you if the incentive is high enough. Therefore, you must proactively construct the relationship so that the cost of betrayal exceeds the reward. In a critical, high-stakes project with several key partners, you deliberately position yourself as the sole custodian and integrator of the most complex database or proprietary workflow, the system. The naive approach is to share all system access and documentation openly from the start, trusting mutual goodwill. This often backfires when an ally, facing personal issues, leaves abruptly, taking important knowledge with them and destabilizing the entire project. The strategic dependence, however, involves you maintaining control over the core system and its updates while limiting access strictly on a need-to-know basis. You keep the master integration blueprint hidden, becoming the essential gatekeeper. Your partners understand that if they leave or betray the project, the workflow collapses and their investments instantly lose value, compelling their compliance through necessity rather than affection. By building structural dependence, you transform the psychological dynamic of your relationships. Your allies are motivated by the most reliable human driver, self-interest. Their reliability becomes a functional, systemic reality. You eliminate the emotional risk of sentimental trust and replace it with the ironclad security of strategic leverage, building a fortress of indispensability that no one can afford to challenge. Number 4. The contingency mandate. The fourth law in mastering the single power move is the structural commitment to the contingency mandate. You must always logistically create and maintain viable alternatives. Plan B, Plan C, and Plan D. This mandate is the primary source of the power of true unpredictability because it eliminates the fatal flaw of desperation. When you are deeply attached to only one outcome, that single contract, that one job offer, or that specific vendor, you grant your adversary a perfect, unassailable lever to apply pressure. Machiavelli defined the efficient path to victory. Never attempt to win by force what can be won by deception. In this context, deception is the strategic illusion that you do not need the current negotiation to succeed. The power of your no is derived entirely from the strength of your alternatives. The strategic cost of singular focus. The structural reality is that the cost of a singular focus is absolute vulnerability. If you commit all your ambition, time, and resources to one option, the failure of that single outcome results in a complete personal and financial catastrophe. This threat forces you into emotional dependency and guarantees you will fold under pressure. Conversely, the individual who possesses multiple, strong alternatives achieves a profound psychological benefit: detachment. They know that the failure of Plan A is merely a neutral data point indicating the necessary switch to Plan B, not a personal disaster. They negotiate with a visible, cool readiness to walk away because they are structurally protected. Your adversary, sensing your deep-seated lack of desperation, is forced to conclude that they hold little to no leverage over you. Your true power comes from the fact that you are not beholden to any single person's yes or no. To build this necessary level of structural resilience, you must apply the mandate universally across 3 critical areas: financial resilience, never rely on a single source of income, cultivate at least 2 separate, reliable revenue streams to eliminate the fear of a single paycheck loss. This financial insulation ensures that you negotiate from a position of want, not need. Relationship resilience. For any critical project or goal, ensure you have multiple capable allies who can immediately step into a vital role if the primary person betrays you or fails. Trust the system of accountability and contingency, not the emotional bond. This maintains structural stability even when trust breaks. Skill resilience. Never rely on a single niche skill. Continually develop secondary, high-value competencies. This ensures that if your primary industry shifts or collapses, you are not rendered obsolete. In a high-stakes scenario of securing a critical investor for your venture, the attached fail unfolds when an unprepared entrepreneur puts all resources into one investor and is forced to accept an unreasonable 70% equity demand out of visible desperation, resulting in a huge loss of control and equity. The strategist, however, approaches the primary investor already armed with verbal agreements and viable term sheets from two backup sources. When faced with the 70% demand, the strategist stays calm and responds, "That valuation is outside our model. We have other funding options that align better with our long-term equity goals. We'll need to stay at 30%. This stance forces the investor to meet the terms or lose the deal because they realize the entrepreneur's survival doesn't depend solely on their decision. The ultimate goal is to eliminate any single point of catastrophic failure. When you maintain multiple options, you transform external uncertainty into internal stability. Your unshakable readiness to walk away is precisely what compels others to meet your terms. You make yourself truly unpredictable because your adversaries can never accurately calculate the total cost of pushing you too far. The wise man never bets his entire kingdom on a single throw of the dice. Number 5. Codify the alliance. The fifth law in dismantling the illusion of trust demands the creation of codified alliances. This is the necessary strategic discipline of eliminating sentimental reliance on verbal promises and replacing it with the structural strength of contracts, objective metrics, and verifiable data. Trust in the context of high-stakes ambition is an emotional liability. Systems provide unshakable security. You must reject the common fatal flaw of believing that personal affection guarantees strategic loyalty. When agreements are sealed only by a handshake and goodwill, they are structurally compromised. Emotional attachment is transient. Necessity is eternal. Machiavelli defined the stark, necessary trade-off for a leader seeking stability. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Applied to your alliances, this means you must prioritize the fear of material or professional consequence over the hope of mutual affection. If an ally breaks a promise, you do not want to be left negotiating with their conscience. You want the structural system, the contract, to trigger an automatic, painful consequence that enforces compliance. The codification protocol. The codification protocol shifts the burden of trust from the individual's fragile commitment to an external, objective structure. Contractual constraints. Every high-value alliance must be secured by a formal, legal document. This contract is not a sign of distrust. It is a blueprint for expected behavior and a clear map of consequences. It transforms a vague emotional understanding into a measurable, enforceable reality, metric-based accountability. You must replace subjective effort with objective, verifiable data. Instead of accepting the promise, "I'll work hard and do my best," you demand the metric. Deliver X result by Y date, or the terms of the agreement automatically shift. This eliminates emotional debate and forces accountability to a neutral figure, the data. Defined exit strategies. The most critical components of any alliance are the exit clauses. You must clearly define the terms of separation, the ownership of resources, and the penalties for non-compliance before the alliance begins. This preemptive strategy neutralizes the threat of betrayal by ensuring the financial cost of defection is ruinous to the departing party's self-interest. When launching a complex interdependent project with a partner, the trust-based fail occurs when partners rely solely on a verbal agreement, believing mutual respect will be enough. The result is that if the partner receives a better offer, They may withdraw their time, leaving the project incomplete and causing emotional pain without legal recourse. In contrast, the codified alliance involves signing a detailed operating agreement, known as the Code, which sets specific performance milestones and includes a non-compete clause that penalizes early exit. While the partner might still get a better external offer, the financial penalties for breaking the agreement make it unprofitable to leave, protecting your strategic interests not through goodwill, but through their predictable adherence to self-preservation. When you rely on systems, you eliminate the emotional toll of betrayal. You operate with the cold certainty that if the alliance dissolves, your position is structurally protected, and the consequence for the adversary is predetermined. You move from the unstable position of hoping for honesty to the unshakable certainty of enforcing reliability. Your loyalty is given to the structure you build, not the person who stands within it. Number 6. The quiet severance. The sixth law in dismantling the illusion of trust is the decisive, non-emotional act of the quiet severance. This is the necessary strategic discipline of ending relationships that have failed your objective audit, eliminating dead weight, and preserving your scarce resources. The majority are psychologically handicapped by fear of confrontation or misplaced loyalty, allowing detrimental ties to linger and hemorrhage energy. This inaction is a catastrophic strategic error. The soft, slow exit provokes maximum resentment. The decisive, sudden severance preserves your leverage. You must understand the psychological danger inherent in dragging out necessary severances, often referred to as the slow fade. A slow, ambiguous exit, avoiding calls, providing vague excuses, or showing inconsistent presence, invites maximum resentment over the maximum amount of time. This prolonged ambiguity gives the weak individual time to plot, gather negative narratives, and attempt to manipulate you with guilt or emotional appeals. Machiavelli defined the absolute strategic requirement when delivering consequences. Severities should be dealt out all at once so that their suddenness may give less offense. Applied to your inner circle, this means the surgical, sudden break is less psychologically damaging and far less strategically costly than a long, drawn-out decline. A quick, decisive cut communicates finality and non-negotiability, leaving no room for debate, confrontation, or plotting. The quiet severance is executed for self-preservation, not for emotional resolution. Engaging in a final, emotional debate with a destructive tie is a guarantee of drama and strategic leakage. The weak tie will not accept your logical severance. They will defend their position, project blame, and attempt to drag you into a vortex of emotional justification. You must avoid this chaos. The non-emotional protocol requires a specific sequence of action. The final message: do not offer detailed explanations, justifications, or a list of their failures. This is not a performance review. A single, brief, professional, non-apologetic statement is sufficient. My strategic commitments have shifted dramatically, and I must eliminate all non-essential ties to maintain focus, or simply, our paths no longer align, and I must close this chapter. Immediate distance. This is the core of the severance. You must block the ability for prolonged communication. Do not engage in follow-up arguments, texting, or meetings to talk it out. The decision is final and non-negotiable. Replacement strategy. The cut must be immediately followed by the replacement strategy. You cannot leave a void in your social or professional structure. You must instantly fill the space left by the dead weight with high-value, high-alignment assets. This reinforces your new, higher standard and prevents you from slipping back into the old pattern out of loneliness. You are no longer the supplicant who hopes for a favorable outcome. You are the architect who commands it. Your unshakable readiness to walk away is precisely what compels them to meet your terms and end the negotiation instantly. That knowledge, the unblinking certainty that you can afford the exit, is the single most powerful move you will ever make in any negotiation, personal or professional. Make your commitment binding. Drop this final, irreversible affirmation into the comments. My dominion is absolute. I am unchallengeable.